Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Coding on Swiboe, the next generation text editor. Top of the show business. I don't have very much today. One thing though, yesterday we ran into a blocking bug. Remember, I was merging master and then suddenly stuff stopped working and I was very confused and thought that I broke something through the merge. And then we undid the merge and figured out that there was already some flakiness in the code that we already had. And I said that I would ignore that for now and trooper on and then try to find the bug later off stream. And I actually found the bug. Here it is. So that's a pull request where I actually change the server to no longer block on writes. And funnily enough, there's actually a to-do in here that describes the bug precisely. Basically what we did is we're using asynchronous I/O through Mayo, but because it was inconvenient to write the writing part also asynchronously, I outlined it by doing it synchronously. And that meant that we basically, we were blocking on writing. And if we were basically blocking on a write while the client was also blocking on a read, then we could deadlock. And I already, I realized that when I wrote that code, I even had a to-do in here that described that precise problem that could come up. Unfortunately, I didn't remember that when we ran into the bug. So I made the pull request now to make the writes also asynchronously. So basically, whenever we have something to write, we wait for the socket to get ready for writing, and then we spin up a task in a thread pool that writes out as much data as we can until everything is written. And that fixed the problem on Mac OS X, but unfortunately the tests don't pass on Travis, so I believe I still have some error somewhere in the logic under Linux, and I need to investigate that a little bit more. But if you are interested, the pull request is open already, and I'm very interested in reviews. Okay, so what do we do today? Actually, I want to do today what I tried to do yesterday. So first merge master and fix the apparent problems. And once we have that, then we can continue working on the RPC context. So yesterday we wrapped the RPC context so that callbacks in C, respectively in Python, actually have a chance to use this context to call other RPCs. Right now we only wrap the finish function here, but today we will wrap the call function, I hope. And then we are mostly done with, we mostly wrapped everything that we needed to, I believe. We still have streaming RPCs, but that's done quick once we have the RPC context. And we call other RPCs. One thing that's missing is error handling. And I think we will concentrate on writing tests for this raw Python wrapper here, and then add error handling doing that. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing I want to do is I want to, instead of having 100 clients for our test case, that 50 clients that each call 100 times, I actually only want to have 5 clients that each call 10 times. That is so that it becomes less likely that we run into this flakiness that is still on master, and we can program today in peace without this bug disturbing us too much. So reduce test load to make it unlikely to run into the flakiness bug. Okay, let's test it real quick. Should still work. Yes, and we don't lock. Much better, much better. And now we're going to ahead and we're going to merge master. There's always the question, should you merge or should you rebase? A lot of people believe very strongly that you should keep a linear history and be only ahead of master. I'm a little torn about that because merging is more convenient, right? You only have to fix merge conflicts once, while on rebasing you basically have to fix them every time you rebase. So and I really in my long career of being a programmer, I never really dug through histories without using some tool that helped me rebasing. So I don't believe that a clean history is super important, so I prefer merging. And we merged, and there's a merge conflict. I think we actually saw this one yesterday too. And we fixed that real quick. Actually, in latest nightlies, we don't even need this anymore because the result expect feature is now stable on head. And I think that's already it. That were all the merge conflicts we had. But we also, I remember we had a mem transmute that was wrong, and that was somewhere, where was that? Where in the RPC call, right? Here, right? Because this actually changed a little bit. So if we do a RPC call, we now get a RPC context back, but we don't actually, we get a result now back. So basically what we have to do is we have to unwrap this, and of course we have to do error handling eventually. But now we can actually wrap this, and now it is correct. Right before we transmuted a result, a box of a result, and we transmuted it to a raw pointer to a client context. And though Rust is happy to do that in an unsafe block, it is of course not the correct thing to do. And I think that's probably already it. So let's build. And then we run, and then we can continue working on what we want to do today. And once we're done with the work today, I will actually make a pull request, because that's already a lot of code we have there. Right, I remember I actually, I was talking about that yesterday too, I think. There's now a connect TCP function and a connect Unix functions, depending if you want to connect to a TCP address or to a Unix domain socket. I believe that we actually will merge them again into one function and then decide by looking at the string that you pass to the function what sort of what you want. If you want a Unix domain socket connection or if you want a TCP connection, because that is more convenient for the C and Python clients too. So this did compile, and now let's run it. Seems like it's still working. That is great. So merged master. Wonderful. Wonderful. We're already much more smoothly on our way than yesterday, which is nice. So where do we continue? Basically what I want to do is I want something here that is that can use the RPC context to do calls. So something like Swiboe server context call, right? So that is like this function, Swiboe client call RPC, but it's not taking a client call, it is taking a server context. So it should be called like this, right? And it takes the RPC context, and then it must take exactly the same arguments. So some function name and some JSON string, which are the arguments. And that's it. That should be it. So here we actually define the function so that ctypes knows what it can do. Swiboe server context call RPC, and a function return type is, I think it is still none, isn't it? Because it was also none for here, client call RPC. No, it returns a client context. So we already wrapped the client context, so this one returns a client context too. And it looks very much the same. It takes the same arguments. Instead of a pointer to a client though, it takes a pointer to a client context. And the rest is just the same. So we can just go ahead and, whoa, that's wrong here. That should be Swiboe server context call RPC, right? And now we can just go ahead and copy this function. The no mangle we need to. That goes here, and the function is called Swiboe server context call RPC. And it's not taking a client, it is taking a context, which is a client RPC server server context, I think, isn't it? Client RPC server context, yes. And the RPC name and the arguments, and that's all correct. Here we have the context, and we will just transmute the first argument that we get into the correct one. And in here we want to transmute it to a reference and not a box, because we don't want to delete it after the fact, right? And then we could actually say this code here is duplicated between this function and the client call function, but I'm actually not too sure if I want to pull that out, because it's just basically those 4 lines. I think we just leave it like that. But we have to fix up the error message so it's not that confusing. Server context call RPC, like so. And now instead of we don't call a client, we actually call the use context call, and that should be it. That should absolutely be it. You know what? Actually, looking at that, I think I want to pull that out. So now we come back again to my non-existing knowledge about generics in Rust. How can I actually do that? So something like this I would like to have. Basically saying something like a call function, and that call function actually takes some type, and it actually takes this type as let's call it context as a mutable reference, and then it takes what does it take actually? It takes a string, RPC name string, and it also takes a argument, and that is a JSON, a setted JSON value object, right? Like so. Something like this. And then basically all it does is this here. So it returns a mutable client RPC server context. And that's not correct, because it's actually returning a client context. And I think we should probably just take those arguments here, because those arguments are the same for all the functions. And then it should look like this, I think. And then it does the RPC name thingy, it converts the arguments, and this error message we need to rename to call. And then it does a context.call, it takes this, and returns the box. So that seems correct. So in this case here, all we need to do is we have the context here, and then we should do something like call mutable context. Actually, that is already a mutable reference, so we just pass the context and the RPC name and the arguments. And then all of this goes away, because that is duplicated, and the same down here. Instead of the context though, we use the client, and this goes away too. And now actually I believe that it will not work, because, right, no method call found for type mutable t. So I feel like I did that before though. Where did I do that before? I think when I look in the client, there is a call function here, but that's unfortunately not doing what I was hoping it would do. Ah, that's too bad. Do I have to introduce a trade object for that? I guess I have to. But then that is more typing that I actually want to spend on that. Right? Well, let's do it real quick, and then we'll see if we actually want to do that or not. Basically, the problem is that here we do not restrict our type, so Rust cannot, by just looking at the function, know what call should do. So unfortunately, we have to like somehow make this call available to Rust. Like tell Rust what this call actually looks like, and then promise that this function, this object actually implements this call. So what we would need here something is like a trade object, RPC caller, something like this. And actually, I think we can just hoist it here and say, well, we have this here. We have a thin client that is an RPC caller, and we have a client that is an RPC caller, but we also have a server, like client server context here, and that's also an RPC caller. And yeah, so we just have to define that somehow. Basically, we can do that here and say, well, we have an RPC caller trait, and the function, the call function, looks like this, right? It actually takes a object that is serializable, itself mutably, a function argument and an argument, and then it returns a result to a client context, like so. And then we can say we don't need pub here, we keep it just like this, and then we can say, well, our client actually, the call function down here, we have to move out now, because we have to say we are implementing impl RPC caller for client, right? Like so. And we do exactly the same for thin client. We also say impl RPC caller for thin client. And I think we don't need the pub here. We don't need the pub here. And now we have to do the same here for the context. So impl RPC caller for context. Pub goes away. But of course, this RPC caller is not available here, so we actually have to include it somehow from client. So basically, we have to say something like client RPC caller. And now we can go back to our lib here and say this T type is actually a client RPC caller. And now it should work. Minus compile errors, of course. Use of undeclared trait name serialize. It says in the client mod. So that is actually true. That should be Serde serialize. And now it's complaining that method call has an incompatible type for trait. Values differ in mutability. So what does that mean? Here we say we actually need to take a mutable self, and down here we take it not as a mutable self. That's immutable. And here too it's actually immutable. But in the server though, here it is mutable because why? Because we update the state. So we actually need it mutable here. So basically then we have to make it mutable in the whole trait. And then have to hope that that is still compiling. I hope it is. I hope we don't actually rely on call not mutating the object somewhere. Otherwise this will get nasty. Expected found struct is actually, oh, this is not returning a result. That is stupid anyways. It should exactly look like the call function above. So it should return a result. So our thin client is not returning a result. That is messy. So I'm already kind of glad that we pulled out a trait object for that, because it showed a bunch of differences in our API, and that's never great, right? Your API should be as symmetric as possible. Okay, and here we actually have to return okay. Now we just don't have to unwrap. No method named call found for type client in the current scope. I guess that is correct now, because we have to import the trait, otherwise it won't work. So in plugin buffer, we now use client, and we use client RPC caller. Trait RPC caller is private. That is not intended. Cannot borrow immutable borrowed content self is mutable. Where's this? That is in client mode 55. So of course now new RPC has to be mutable. Like take a mutable self too. Whee! So many errors. Cannot borrow immutable for plugin client is mutable. Where's that? That is in 319. So what you're saying is that this should be mutable too? We're getting there. Plugin list files in 110. Same here, right? We make a new plugin somewhere, and that has to be mutable. Otherwise, all of this will not work. Great. Great. Seems like we got it. Let's run test again. Of course, we didn't change anything in the Python code yet, so whoa! So it shouldn't have changed, but apparently it has. So, what did I change? Oh yeah, oh well, of course. We actually did change something in the Python code, right? I actually introduced here this testing thingy, the testing call, and I just gave it some function and some invalid JSON blob, and that's why it's not working. So if I run it now, yes, it's still working. And now we would like to introduce like a small one-off test for this one. And how should that look? Basically, what we need is we need one client that has already registered a callback that we can then rely on calling here. So we basically need a new callback. We call it callback1. That takes the context and it takes arguments, and all it does is it echoes the arguments. And then it calls RPC context. Nope, it actually calls these two lines, right? It just succeeds. There's nothing more to be done. It returns nothing useful, or maybe does it return something useful? I guess it can return who is blah something. That is valid JSON, isn't it? I think it is. Okay, so this one is okay, and then we actually need a servant. We already have a servant client, and the servant client already has a one RPC registered, and I think it can just get another one that we call test1, and that is RPC callback 1, which we have to define too, like so. And now we have something to call in this callback, right? We basically say, interesting though, I think this might actually not work. Let's try it out though. I think it might not work. And here we call test1, and we just give it an empty JSON object, right? And that gives us a client context back. And if we now say we wait on this client context, I believe that we will deadlock. And that's actually desired behavior. But I will explain in a second what we can do to fix it. So I think the code is now valid, but I believe that it will deadlock. Let's see. Yes, it does exactly so. And the reason is basically we register this two RPCs on the same client. So the client only has one thread to handle RPC requests right now, so that it does one at a time and you don't have to deal with threading inside of your implementation. We might make that an option going forward to make it like more than one thread to actually handle callbacks. But that means since it is only one thread, basically in this one thread, we issue a new RPC to the same client, and we then wait in this one for this client to finish this RPC that we just issued to it. But of course that cannot work because the client only has one thread, so the other RPC gets queued up, but because this one never terminates, this one can never run. So actually we need a second client that will be serving our second RPC, and then it should work. And it does. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So what did we do? So we finished calling other RPCs, but of course we don't get a result back here. That's actually what we should probably look into the next time around. Look into getting results back. And then we still have handling like streaming RPCs that we need to do. But I think so far we made quite some progress. So what's the time? 30 minutes in. Perfect. That's the ideal time for a stream, I think. So I will cut it here and open the stream for questions. Are there any questions? So what's the commit message actually? We introduced a RPC caller trait, and we also wrapped what is my favorite Twitch emote? So actually I have to say that I'm not very familiar with Twitch and Twitch emotes, so I don't know. Do you have some suggestions? I read up on this Kappa one once, I think. Of course the question counts. Every question counts. What did we wrap? We actually wrapped client RPC server context call. I don't know. They don't, like, Shriek suggests some emotes here in chat. They don't look very appealing to me. Isn't there a list of all Twitch emotes somewhere? There we go, spamming emotes. Okay, this change I just did, I will actually now suggest for merging, though there are no tests yet, and I mean the whole thing is not yet done, but I think it should get into master finally, because otherwise the diff will get too big and the poor soul who has to review it will have a hard time with so many changes. Is somebody in chat interested in doing the code review for that? Twitch emotes list. Oh, I found it. Look at that. Oh, I like those monkeys. Those monkeys are cool. What's up with all those faces? Are those all like employees of Twitch? I think that Kappa person was an employee of Twitch once. I don't know. That can't be all the Twitch emotes there are though, right? There must be more. This one is pretty cool. Brain slug. Interesting. So that was mighty popular on Thursday. Weird. Well, enough sidetracking. I will push that now and make a pull request out of that, and then I'll pick a random person to review it. I hope that will work out. Okay, thanks for watching, and I see you people tomorrow.